The rain hammered down on the auction barn roof. The morning Cole Hartley stood in the mud and watched them load Thunder into the slaughter truck, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his heart breaking in ways he didn't know were still possible. The horse fought with everything he had left. His hooves struck the metal ramp like thunder itself, each impact a protest against the fate that awaited him. Cole stood frozen, 50 yards away, telling himself this was mercy, that some creatures were too broken to save, that he'd tried everything and failed. The rain mixed with tears he refused to acknowledge, running down his face as the trailer door slammed shut with a finality that echoed across the empty lot. Then Thunder turned his head. Through the rain and the distance and all of Cole's carefully constructed justifications, the horse's eyes found him. Dark, knowing eyes that held a reflection of abandonment Cole recognized from his own mirror. In that moment, something inside the cowboy shattered completely. He started running toward the truck, and before the rest of the story unfolded, before the full weight of what had brought Cole to this desperate moment became clear, it seemed important to pause and acknowledge that if these opening moments had already stirred something in the hearts of those listening, they could help this story reach others who needed it by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing their thoughts in the comments below, because stories of redemption, of second chances, of refusing to give up, were the ones that mattered most. 6 months earlier, Cole Hartley had received the phone call that changed everything. He'd been in the middle of a routine procedure at the equine clinic in Denver, where he'd built his career over 15 years, suturing a gelding's leg wound, his hands steady, his mind focused on the precise work that had always made sense to him, in ways human relationships never had. When his phone buzzed in his pocket, he'd ignored it. When it buzzed again immediately after, he'd felt the first flutter of dread. The clinic receptionist, Maria, appeared in the doorway of the surgical suite, her face pale. "Dr. Hartley, you need to take this call. It's about your father." Cole's hands had stilled over the horse's leg. He'd looked up at Maria, and in her eyes he'd already known. His father was dead. Douglas Hartley, 68 years old, had collapsed while mending a fence line on the family ranch in Montana. A massive heart attack, instantaneous, the sheriff said later. He'd been alone on the property, working under the vast Montana sky, when his heart simply stopped. His horse, an old buckskin mare named Sadie, had wandered back to the barn hours later, still wearing her saddle, reins trailing in the dirt. By the time the ranch foreman found Douglas, the spring afternoon had turned cold. Cole had driven through the night to reach the ranch, 12 hours of highway stretching between his modern life in Denver and the place he'd sworn never to return to. The ranch sat in the shadow of the crazy mountains, 4,800 acres of rolling prairie that had been in the Hartley family since 1889, passed down from father to son through 4 generations of cowboys who'd lived and died for this unforgiving land. Cole was the 5th generation, and he'd run away. He'd been 23 when he left, fresh out of college with an acceptance letter to veterinary school, and a desperate need to escape the weight of expectation that pressed down on him like the big Montana sky. His father had been 54 then, still strong, still certain that Cole would eventually come to his senses and return to take over the ranch. They'd fought in the barn that last day. Cole could still remember every word, every accusation hurled like stones between them. "You're abandoning everything our family built," Douglas had said, his voice hard as iron. 4 generations of Hartleys have kept this ranch alive, and you're walking away to play doctor to rich people's horses in the city. "I'm not you, Dad," Cole had shot back. "I don't want to spend my life struggling to keep this place afloat, watching you work yourself to death for land that barely sustains us. There's a whole world out there, and I want to be part of it." "Then go," Douglas had said, turning his back, "but don't expect me to celebrate while you turn your back on your legacy." Cole had left the next morning, and for 7 years, father and son had maintained a silence that grew deeper and more painful with each passing month. Pride on both sides had built a wall too high to climb. Cole had sent a card at Christmas each year, always unsigned. Douglas had never responded. Now Douglas was gone, and all that remained were regrets heavy enough to crush a man's chest. The funeral was held at the small white church in Timber Ridge, the nearest town to the ranch, population 342. The pews were half full, old ranchers with weathered faces and Sunday suits that smelled of mothballs, a handful of distant cousins Cole barely recognized, and Pastor Miller, who'd known the Hartley family for decades. Everyone spoke of Douglas's dedication, his skill with horses, his quiet strength. No one mentioned that he'd died alone, or that his son hadn't spoken to him in 7 years. After the service, Tom Bradshaw, the family attorney, pulled Cole aside in the church parking lot. The wind carried the scent of coming rain and sage, and Tom's eyes held a mixture of sympathy and concern that made Cole want to flee back to Denver immediately. "Your father left everything to you, Cole," Tom said, his voice gentle but direct. "The ranch, all the livestock, the equipment, the house, everything." Cole stared at the mountains in the distance, feeling the trap closing around him. "I can't stay here, Tom. I have a life in Denver, a career." "I understand. But there are decisions that need to be made. The ranch has been operating at a loss for the past 3 years. Your father took out a substantial loan to cover expenses, and the bank is getting nervous. You'll need to either commit to turning things around or sell the property." The word sell hit Cole like a physical blow. Despite everything, despite the years of distance and resentment, the thought of strangers owning Hartley land made his stomach turn. It would be the ultimate betrayal of his father's memory, of all those generations who'd sacrificed to keep this place in the family. "How much time do I have?" Cole asked. 6 months, Tom said. "The bank wants to see a viable plan by then, or they'll call the loan." 6 months. It might as well have been a life sentence. Cole had moved into his father's house that week, surrounded by a lifetime of memories he'd tried to forget. The house was exactly as he remembered. The same worn furniture, the same faded photographs on the walls, the same smell of coffee and leather and wood smoke. His childhood bedroom still held his old rodeo trophies and ribbons, frozen in time like a museum to the boy he used to be. The ranch itself was in rougher shape than Cole had expected. Fences needed mending, buildings needed repair, and the herd of cattle had dwindled to barely sustainable numbers. But it was the horses that broke his heart. His father had always specialized in horses, breeding them, training them, preparing them for work or show. At its peak, the ranch had housed 30 head of quality horses. Now there were only 12, and most of them were older animals past their prime, except for one. Thunder. Cole first saw the stallion on his 3rd day at the ranch. He'd been walking the property, cataloging repairs, when he heard the commotion coming from the far pasture. Jake Morrison, the ranch foreman who'd stayed on after Douglas's death, was trying to get a halter on a massive black stallion who wanted nothing to do with human contact. The horse was magnificent, 17 hands of pure muscle and fury, with a coat like midnight and eyes that blazed with intelligence and rage. He reared up, front hooves striking the air, and Jake barely managed to roll out of the way. "That's Thunder," Jake said later, leaning against the fence rail, breathing hard. "Your father bought him 8 months ago at an auction. Previous owner had ruined him, beat him, starved him, broke his spirit in all the wrong ways. Doug thought he could fix him, bring him back. But Thunder, he doesn't trust humans anymore. Can't say I blame him." Cole watched the stallion pace the fence line, his movements sharp with barely contained violence. As a veterinarian, Cole had seen plenty of abused animals. He knew the signs: the flat ears, the rolling eyes, the tension in every muscle ready to explode into fight or flight at any moment. "What was Dad's plan for him?" Cole asked. Jake shook his head. "To heal him, I think. Doug spent hours out here, just sitting in the pasture, not even trying to approach. He said some creatures need time more than they need fixing, but time ran out." Cole felt something twist in his chest. Of course his father would have taken on an impossible case, a horse everyone else had given up on. Douglas Hartley had never known how to quit, even when quitting was the sensible choice. "What happens to him now?" Cole asked. Jake's expression darkened. "Honestly, he's a liability. Can't be ridden, can't be handled, dangerous to have around. Most folks would say he should be put down or sent to auction. Nobody wants a horse they can't control." That night, Cole sat on the porch of his father's house. His house now, he supposed, and thought about Thunder. The stallion reminded him of himself in uncomfortable ways, both of them damaged by circumstances, both of them fighting against the people trying to help, both of them trapped in places they didn't want to be. Over the following weeks, Cole threw himself into the work of salvaging the ranch. He hired contractors to repair the worst of the damage, worked dawn to dusk fixing fences and caring for the animals, and spent his evenings poring over financial records trying to find a path forward. The bank wanted a plan, and Cole was determined to prove the ranch could survive. But he kept coming back to Thunder. The stallion haunted him. Cole would catch glimpses of the black horse in the far pasture, always alone, always watchful. Sometimes in the evening, Cole would walk out to the fence line and just observe. The way his father apparently had. Thunder would pace and snort, maintaining his distance, but Cole sensed the horse was aware of him, studying him the way Cole was studying the horse. "You're wasting time on that one," Jake said one evening, finding Cole at the fence. "Some horses are too broken to fix." "Maybe," Cole said. "Or maybe we just haven't figured out what they need." The truth was, Cole didn't know why Thunder mattered so much to him. Maybe it was because the horse represented his father's final mission, the last creature Douglas had tried to save. Maybe it was because Thunder's rage and fear reflected Cole's own feelings about being back on this ranch, trapped by duty and guilt. Or maybe it was simply that giving up on Thunder felt like giving up on something essential, some core belief that broken things could be mended if someone cared enough to try. Cole began spending an hour each day in Thunder's pasture. He didn't try to approach the stallion. He just sat on the ground, his back against the fence post, and talked. He talked about his father, about the ranch, about his own fears and regrets. Thunder would stand at the far end of the pasture, ears swiveling to catch the words, body tense and ready to flee. But he listened. 3 weeks into this routine, Thunder took 5 steps closer. It wasn't much, still 50 feet separated them, but it was something. Cole felt his heart rate increase, careful not to make any sudden movements. "That's it, boy," Cole said softly. "You decide when you're ready. I'm not going anywhere." Except he was going somewhere. The 6-month deadline was approaching fast, and despite Cole's best efforts, the ranch's finances remained precarious. He'd managed to stabilize things, but turning a real profit would require capital he didn't have and time he couldn't spare. His clinic in Denver had been patient, but they needed him back. His life was there, not here in this place that held nothing but painful memories. The practical choice was to sell. Tom had already received inquiries from neighboring ranchers interested in expanding their holdings. The money would be enough to pay off the bank loan with plenty left over. Cole could return to Denver, to his real life, and leave Montana behind once and for all. It was the smart decision, the logical decision, but every time Cole tried to commit to it, he thought about Thunder. 4 months in, on a grey morning that promised rain, everything fell apart. Cole had been in town meeting with Tom to discuss the sale details when he got the call from Jake. There'd been an incident at the ranch. One of the young ranch hands, a kid named Brett, who'd been hired to help with repairs, had decided to prove his cowboy credentials by trying to rope Thunder. The stallion had nearly killed him. By the time Cole arrived back at the ranch, Brett was in an ambulance headed to the hospital with a broken collarbone and 3 cracked ribs. Thunder was in a corner of his pasture, sides heaving, eyes wild, blood on his hooves. Jake met Cole at the gate, his face grim. "Brett's lucky to be alive." Thunder went after him like a demon. "Took 4 of us to get Brett out of there." Cole's stomach churned as he looked at the stallion. Thunder was pacing, head high, nostrils flared, every line of his body screaming rage and fear. This was what terror looked like, Cole thought. This was what happened when trust was violated over and over until there was nothing left but violence. "I called the sheriff," Jake said quietly. "He wants the horse put down. Says it's a public safety issue. Brett's family is talking about pressing charges, saying you were negligent keeping a dangerous animal." Cole felt the world tilting beneath him. Thunder was in his own pasture. Brett went in there against explicit orders. "Doesn't matter. The liability is yours. The horse has shown he's dangerous and there's documentation now. Sheriff Thompson is giving you 48 hours to handle it yourself, or he'll get a court order. Put Thunder down. Execute a horse for being exactly what humans had made him, terrified and defensive. The injustice of it burned in Cole's chest. That night, Cole couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch in the darkness, listening to the wind move through the grass, thinking about his father. Douglas had bought Thunder knowing the horse was damaged, knowing the road to healing would be long and uncertain. His father had believed some creatures were worth the effort, worth the risk, worth the patience required to help them find their way back from the darkness. And now Cole was being asked to give up on his father's final act of faith. At dawn, Cole walked out to Thunder's pasture. The stallion stood in the center, exhausted from his night of pacing, but still alert, still ready to fight. Cole climbed through the fence rails and sat down in the grass, the morning dew soaking through his jeans. "I don't know what to do," Cole said aloud, his voice rough with sleeplessness. "Everyone says you're too dangerous, that keeping you alive is irresponsible. They're probably right. But my father believed in you. He saw something worth saving. And I think I need to believe in that too. I think I need to believe that broken things can heal, that damage doesn't have to be permanent. Because if you can't be saved, then what hope is there for any of us?" Thunder's ears flicked forward, the first time Cole had seen them in anything but a defensive position. "I'm not giving up on you," Cole said, and as the words left his mouth, he felt something shift inside him. A decision made, a line crossed. "I don't care what anyone says. I'm not giving up." Over the next week, Cole fought for Thunder's life. He called in favors from colleagues, had a veterinary behaviorist consult remotely, documented every moment of Thunder's history and the circumstances of the attack. He argued with the sheriff, with the insurance company, with Tom, who warned him he was making a terrible mistake. Brett's family agreed to drop their complaints in exchange for Cole covering all medical expenses. The sheriff reluctantly agreed to hold off on the court order if Cole could demonstrate he was taking proper safety precautions and making progress with the horse. But progress seemed impossible. Thunder had regressed completely after the incident with Brett. He wouldn't let anyone within 100 feet. He paced his pasture like a caged predator, and the tension in his body suggested he was one wrong move away from another explosion. The 6-month deadline came and went. Tom filed for an extension with the bank, but Cole knew time was running out. The ranch was costing money faster than it was making it. Thunder was a lawsuit waiting to happen, and Cole's life in Denver was dissolving in his absence. Everything was falling apart. It was Jake who finally spoke the truth Cole didn't want to hear. "Boss, I know you want to save that horse," the foreman said one evening, his weathered face showing genuine sympathy. "But sometimes the kindest thing we can do is let go. Thunder's suffering. Every day he spends like this, full of fear and rage, is torture for him. Maybe the merciful choice is to end that suffering." Cole wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. He was exhausted, physically, emotionally, financially. He'd been fighting for months to save a ranch he didn't want, to honor a father who died disappointed in him, to rescue a horse who didn't want to be rescued. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe it was time to admit defeat. The next morning, Cole called the auction house. They had a sale scheduled for the following Thursday. Cole made arrangements to bring Thunder in. The man on the phone didn't ask many questions. He'd done this 1,000 times before. Accepted broken horses that no one else wanted, sent them on to the slaughterhouses that paid by the pound. It was practical. It was merciful. It was the end. Cole spent the intervening days in a fog. He went through the motions of ranch work, avoided Thunder's pasture, and told himself he was making the right choice. The horse was suffering. This was kindness. But his dreams told a different story. Every night, Cole dreamed of his father, of their last argument, of all the words left unsaid. He dreamed of Thunder's eyes, dark and knowing, reflecting back his own abandonment. Thursday morning arrived grey and cold, with rain threatening. Jake had arranged for a livestock trailer, and 2 experienced handlers came with it, men who knew how to move dangerous horses, who carried prods and ropes and showed no hesitation in their work. It took an hour to load Thunder. The stallion fought with everything he had, his hooves striking metal, his screams echoing across the ranch. Cole stood outside the pasture, watching, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his heart breaking. When they finally got Thunder into the trailer, one of the handlers slammed the door shut and turned to Cole. "Mean son of a bitch, you're making the right call. Horse like that, there's no fixing him." The trailer pulled out, heading down the long ranch driveway toward the main road. Cole stood in the rain. It had started falling now, heavy drops that ran down his face and soaked through his jacket. He watched the trailer disappear around the bend, carrying Thunder toward his death. And then Thunder turned his head. Through the metal slats of the trailer, through the rain and the distance, the stallion looked back. His eyes found Cole's across 100 yards of muddy ground, and in that gaze was something Cole finally recognized. It wasn't rage, it wasn't fear, it was a question. "Are you giving up on me too?" The same question Cole had silently asked his father every Christmas when no response came to his card. The same question that had haunted him through 7 years of silence. The same question that would haunt him for the rest of his life if he let that trailer keep driving. Cole started running. His boots slipped in the mud, his breath came in ragged gasps, but he ran harder than he'd ever run in his life. He ran past Jake, who shouted something Cole didn't hear. He ran down the driveway, chasing the trailer that was pulling onto the main road. "Stop!" Cole screamed. "Stop the truck!" The driver must have seen him in the rearview mirror, a muddy, desperate man running full speed down a ranch road in the pouring rain. The truck pulled to the shoulder. Cole caught up, gasping, and pounded on the driver's window. "I changed my mind. I'm not selling him." The driver looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "You're the one who called us. We drove 2 hours to get here." "I know. I'm sorry. I'll pay you for your time. But I can't do this. I can't give up on him." The handlers were not pleased, and it took another 30 minutes and a significant payment to get Thunder unloaded back at the ranch. The stallion exploded out of the trailer, wild-eyed and trembling, and galloped to the far corner of his pasture. Jake walked up to Cole, shaking his head. "You know you just bought yourself a world of trouble, right?" "I know," Cole said, watching Thunder. The stallion had stopped at the fence line, sides heaving, looking back at the humans who'd just put him through another trauma. "So what's the plan now?" Jake asked. Cole took a deep breath, feeling something solid settle in his chest. A certainty he hadn't felt in months. "I'm staying, I'm keeping the ranch, and I'm going to save that horse if it takes the rest of my life." The words hung in the rain-soaked air, a commitment made, a bridge burned. Cole's life in Denver, his career, his carefully constructed escape from this place, all of it would have to go. Because some things mattered more than convenience, more than practical choices, more than running away from hard truths. His father had known that. Douglas had stayed on this land through drought and debt, through the loss of his wife and the estrangement from his son, because he believed in something bigger than comfort. He believed in legacy, in keeping promises to the dead, in refusing to abandon things just because they were difficult. And he'd believed in Thunder. Over the following weeks, Cole rebuilt his life around that belief. He officially resigned from the Denver clinic, packed up his apartment, and committed fully to the ranch. Tom worked with the bank to restructure the loan, giving Cole more time, but requiring him to show consistent progress. And every day, Cole worked with Thunder. He didn't try to train the horse, he didn't try to break him or dominate him. Instead, Cole simply showed up. He sat in Thunder's pasture for hours, talking about everything and nothing. He brought his lunch out there, did paperwork sitting in the grass, sometimes just read a book while the stallion paced and watched. "The thing about trauma," Cole explained one afternoon to Jake, who'd come to check on him, "is that it rewires the brain. Thunder's not being stubborn or mean. He's operating from a place of survival. Every human he's ever known has hurt him, so his brain tells him all humans are dangerous. We can't force him to trust us. We have to show him consistently over time that we're different." "And how long does that take?" Jake asked. "As long as it takes." It took 3 months before Thunder let Cole within 20 feet. It took another month before the distance closed to 10 feet. Small victories that felt monumental. The day Thunder didn't flee when Cole entered the pasture. The afternoon the stallion took a single step toward Cole instead of away. The evening Thunder's ears pricked forward in curiosity instead of flattening in fear. Cole celebrated each tiny breakthrough and weathered each setback with patience he hadn't known he possessed. When Thunder regressed after a thunderstorm triggered his trauma responses, Cole simply started over, sitting farther away, rebuilding trust from scratch. The ranch began to change too. Word spread about the cowboy who wouldn't give up on the killer horse, and people started showing up. First it was just curious neighbors, then horse owners with their own troubled animals seeking advice. Cole found himself helping others work through their horses' behavioral issues, applying the same principles of patience and understanding he was using with Thunder. Jake started calling it Hartley's Haven for difficult horses, and the name stuck. Cole began accepting a few boarding cases, horses with trauma, horses others had given up on, horses who needed someone to believe in them. The income helped stabilize the ranch finances, and more importantly, it gave purpose to the place his father had loved. 6 months after the day Cole had run through the rain to stop Thunder's trailer, something miraculous happened. Cole was sitting in the pasture at sunset, his back against the fence post, watching the sky turn gold and crimson over the mountains. He'd had a long day. 2 new horses had arrived, both with significant trust issues, and Cole had spent hours helping them settle in. He was tired but content, feeling for the first time since returning to Montana that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Thunder had been grazing about 30 feet away, the closest he'd been all week. Cole wasn't watching the stallion directly. He'd learned that direct attention felt threatening, so he was startled when he heard hoofsteps approaching. He looked up slowly. Thunder was walking toward him, head low, steps deliberate. The stallion's ears were forward, his eyes soft. He stopped 5 feet away, close enough that Cole could see every detail of his face, the small scars from old injuries, the wisdom in his dark eyes, the question in his posture. Cole's heart pounded, but he kept his voice calm. "Hey, boy, you finally ready to say hello?" Thunder took another step closer, then another. He was 3 feet away now, then 2. Cole could smell him, hay and grass and the particular scent of horse that had been the backdrop of his entire childhood. The stallion stretched his neck out, nostrils flaring as he investigated this human who'd shown up every single day for months, who'd never raised a hand, who'd never demanded anything, who'd simply been present and patient and unwavering. Thunder's nose touched Cole's shoulder, barely a brush, there and gone, but it was everything. It was trust offered after trust had been shattered. It was hope choosing to bloom in scorched earth. It was a broken creature deciding to try one more time. Cole felt tears streaming down his face. "That's my boy," he whispered. "You're so brave. You're so brave." Thunder stood there for a long moment, this wild thing who'd been beaten and starved and betrayed, allowing himself to be in the presence of vulnerability. Then he turned and walked away, not in fear but in choice, coming and going on his own terms as it should be. Cole sat in the fading light and wept. He wept for Thunder and for his father. He wept for all the years of silence and stubbornness, for all the words unsaid and chances missed. He wept for the man he'd been who would have sent this horse to slaughter, and for the man he was becoming who understood that some things were worth every sacrifice. The following weeks brought more breakthroughs. Thunder began seeking Cole out, approaching the fence when he heard Cole's voice. He allowed Cole to brush him, to check his hooves, to slip a halter over his head. Each milestone was celebrated, each setback accepted as part of the journey. 9 months after Cole had stopped the slaughter truck, Thunder wore a saddle for the first time since his rescue. Cole didn't rush. He let the stallion wear the tack for just a few minutes each day, building positive associations, proving that this didn't have to end in pain. And 1 year to the day after Douglas Hartley had died alone fixing a fence, his son rode Thunder across the ranch his great-great-grandfather had founded in 1889. It wasn't a triumphant gallop across the prairie. It was a slow, careful walk, Thunder's ears swiveling nervously, Cole's hands gentle on the reins, both of them learning to trust. They rode out to the fence line where Douglas had collapsed, where his heart had given out under the big Montana sky. Cole dismounted and stood at that spot, one hand on Thunder's neck, looking out over the land his father had loved so much. "I understand now, Dad," Cole said to the wind and the grass and the mountains. "I understand why you stayed, why this place mattered, why you couldn't give up on it, even when giving up would have been easier. You were keeping faith with everyone who came before and trying to leave something worth keeping for whoever came after." Thunder nuzzled Cole's shoulder, this horse who'd been hours from death, who'd been written off as irredeemable, who'd been saved because one man decided that being saved was worth the cost. "I'm sorry I left," Cole continued, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry I was too proud to come back, too stubborn to call. I thought I was escaping, but I was just running away from the hard work of being present. You tried to teach me that and I wouldn't listen, but Thunder taught me. He taught me that showing up matters, that consistency matters, that refusing to give up on broken things, broken horses, broken relationships, broken dreams, is what makes us human. The sun was setting over the crazy mountains, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. The ranch spread out before them, 4,800 acres of legacy and possibility. Cole mounted Thunder again, and together they rode back to the barn, past the pastures where other rescued horses grazed in peace, past the house that had been in his family for generations, past the barn where he and his father had said their last angry words to each other. Jake was waiting at the barn entrance, a rare smile on his weathered face. Never thought I'd see that horse under saddle. Your father would be proud. Cole swung down from Thunder, running a hand along the stallion's neck. I hope so. I'm trying to be the man he believed I could be. You're doing more than that, Jake said. You're building something here. Something that matters. These horses you're helping, the people you're teaching, it's changing lives, Cole. Your father kept this ranch alive. You're making it mean something. That night, Cole sat on the porch of the house that was truly his now, a bottle of his father's whiskey and 2 glasses on the table beside him. He poured 1 glass and raised it to the empty chair where Douglas used to sit. To second chances, Cole said to the darkness, and to refusing to give up on the things that matter. The wind carried his words away across the prairie, and somewhere in the barn, Thunder nickered softly, content in his stall, safe in the knowledge that he was finally home. Hartley's haven for difficult horses became known throughout Montana and beyond. Cole's reputation as someone who could reach the unreachable horses grew, and with it came a steady stream of animals others had abandoned. Horses with trauma, horses with behavioral issues, horses who'd lost their way and needed someone to believe they could find it again. Each horse that arrived broken and left healed was a testament to the principle Cole's father had tried to teach him. That showing up every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, is what transforms lives. That patience is stronger than force. That love manifests in consistency. Thunder became the heart of the operation. Visitors would arrive to see the legendary stallion who'd been destined for slaughter, who'd been labeled too dangerous to save, who now carried children on his back during weekend ranch tours. Gentle as a lamb because someone had refused to give up on him. Cole would watch the big black horse interact with the kids, and he'd think about that rainy morning when he'd stood in the mud and almost let Thunder die. He'd think about how close he'd come to making the practical choice, the reasonable decision that would have ended a life and solved a problem and left him empty. He'd been so certain that staying at the ranch would be a prison. Instead, it had set him free. Free from the running, free from the guilt, free from the hollow success of a life built on escape rather than engagement. Some evenings, when the work was done and the horses were settled, Cole would walk out to the spot where his father had died. He'd sit in the grass and talk to Douglas the way he used to talk to Thunder. Honestly, without expecting answers, just needing to say the words. "I wish I'd come back sooner," Cole would say. "I wish I'd swallowed my pride and called you. I wish I'd told you I was wrong about so many things. But I'm here now, Dad. I'm doing the work. I'm keeping the faith. And I hope, wherever you are, you know that Thunder's okay. He's more than okay. He's teaching me what you tried to teach me all along, that broken things can heal if someone loves them enough to stay." The ranch prospered not in spite of its mission, but because of it. People wanted to support a place that gave second chances. Donors contributed to help cover costs for horses whose owners couldn't afford rehabilitation. Volunteers came to help with the work. The community that had once watched Cole and his father hurt each other with silence now watched Cole build something that honored his father's memory in the best possible way. And Thunder, the horse who'd been destined to die on that rainy morning, became a symbol of what's possible when someone refuses to give up on a horse, on a dream, on a legacy, on themselves. 5 years after Douglas Hartley's death, on a spring morning bright with possibility, Cole stood in the barn and watched Thunder teach a young horse named Phoenix how to trust humans again. Phoenix had arrived 3 months earlier, starved and beaten, much like Thunder had been. Now Thunder acted as a calming presence, showing the younger horse that these humans were safe, that this place was different. Jake wandered over, leaning against the stall door. Never gets old, does it? Watching them help each other heal. No, Cole agreed, smiling. It never does. Got a call this morning, Jake continued. Woman from Idaho says she's got a mare everyone's given up on. Dangerous, they say. Beyond help. Wants to know if we'd take her. Cole looked at Thunder, this magnificent creature who'd been ours from slaughter, who'd been labeled beyond saving, who now stood as living proof that patience and love could overcome almost anything. Tell her to bring the mare, Cole said. We don't give up on horses here, not ever. As he said the words, Cole felt his father's presence like a warm hand on his shoulder. Approval, pride, and most of all, forgiveness for the years they'd lost. Douglas had bought Thunder knowing the horse was broken, knowing the healing would be hard, believing that some creatures were worth every ounce of effort required to save them. He'd been trying to teach Cole about more than horse training. He'd been trying to teach him about commitment, about showing up, about refusing to abandon difficult things just because they were difficult, about how the work of healing, whether it's healing a traumatized horse or healing a damaged relationship, requires presence and patience and unwavering belief. Cole had learned that lesson the hard way, almost learned it too late, but Thunder had given him a second chance, just as Cole had given Thunder a second chance. They'd saved each other, really, two broken creatures who'd found healing in refusing to give up. That evening, as the sun set over the crazy mountains and painted the Montana sky in shades of amber and rose, Cole rode Thunder out across the ranch one more time. They moved together now with perfect understanding, horse and rider in harmony, two souls that had found their way home to each other and to this land. In the distance, the other horses grazed peacefully in their pastures, all of them rescues, all of them given up on by someone, all of them finding healing at Hartley's Haven. The ranch that Douglas had saved through sheer stubbornness was thriving now under his son's care, transformed from a legacy of obligation into a legacy of hope. Cole thought about that morning in the rain, when he'd stood frozen, watching Thunder being loaded into a trailer bound for slaughter. He thought about the moment Thunder had turned and looked back at him, asking without words if Cole was really going to give up. Thank God he'd run. Thank God he'd fought through his exhaustion and his doubts and his certainty that he was making a mistake. Thank God he'd refused to let practical considerations override what his heart knew to be true, that some lives are worth fighting for, that some battles are worth the cost, that showing up every day for something difficult is what gives life meaning. Thunder snorted softly, pulling Cole back to the present moment, to the feeling of power and grace beneath him, to the land spreading out in every direction, to the home he'd tried so hard to escape and had finally learned to love. Come on, boy, Cole said, turning Thunder toward the barn. Let's go home. As they rode through the gathering dusk, past the pastures full of horses learning to trust again, past the barn where Douglas had spent his life working with these magnificent creatures, past the house that had sheltered 5 generations of Hartleys, Cole understood something fundamental about the nature of redemption. It's not a single moment. It's not a dramatic rescue or a triumphant victory. It's showing up every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. It's choosing patience over force, presence over absence, faith over fear. It's a cowboy running through the rain to stop a slaughter truck, because giving up isn't an option anymore. It's a traumatized horse deciding to trust one more time because someone proved they were worth trusting. It's a son finally understanding what his father tried to teach him, even though the lesson came too late for them to share it together. And it's a ranch in Montana, nestled against the mountains where broken things come to heal and second chances are written into the very soil. Thunder's hoofbeats echoed softly on the barn floor as Cole led him into his stall. The stallion nuzzled Cole's shoulder, the gesture that had once been a miracle and was now simply how they said goodnight. Cole stroked the horse's neck, feeling the warmth and strength beneath his hand, grateful beyond words for the gift of this creature's trust. "Sleep well, boy," Cole whispered. "Same time tomorrow." Because that was the promise that mattered, not grand gestures or perfect outcomes, but the simple commitment to show up tomorrow, and the day after that, and all the days after that. It was the promise his father had kept to this land. It was the promise Cole had made to Thunder, and it was the promise that had saved them both.